Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we are looking at Aminatou the Fateshifter, one of the rare Planeswalker as a commander cards that we're taking a look at. So this was requested by one of my YouTube commenters. So Aminatou is an Esper commander that costs 3 mana. It starts with 3 loyalty, and it has 3 abilities. +1, draw a card, then put a card from your hand on top of your library. So it's sort of doing this weird looting effect. -1, exile another target permanent you own, then return it to the battlefield under your control. And finally, -6, choose left or right. Each player gains control of all non-land permanents other than Aminatou, the Fateshifter, controlled by the next player in the chosen direction. So primarily, we're going to evaluate Aminatou based on these first 2 abilities and not the last one, because it's going to take some time to plus and then use this ability. Also, the amount of ways that you can use this ability is pretty limited. So obviously what you want is you want to steal all of the permanents from one player while not allowing them to steal any of the permanents from you, which you could do by potentially like using something that phases out all of your permanents. But other than that, there's not a whole lot you can do with this. And as I said again, -6 makes it a little out of reach. The other 2 abilities are the draw and then put a card on top. So this can be used to filter through cards, or we can use it in combination with things that care about what's on top of our deck. So that might be cards like, let's say, miracle cards. And then the last one is blinking things, including things that we own but don't control. So if we have ways of exchanging permanents with our opponents, we can then steal back our permanents. So there's a lot of different ways that we can take Aminatou, but one thing that's going to remain consistent no matter what is that Planeswalkers usually suck in EDH, and that's because it's very hard to protect your Planeswalkers from being attacked when you have 3 separate opponents at minimum. So first things first is that we're going to want lots of ways to protect Aminatou, and thankfully, since Aminatou isn't a creature, we can run as many sweepers as we want with no real issue. So as long as we are limiting the amount of creatures we play in the deck to a very low amount, all of these sweepers are going to be ways of killing all of our opponent's creatures while simultaneously protecting Aminatou, which is going to pull double duty. So obviously Psych Rift as normal, but then also Damnation, Day of Judgment, Supreme Verdict, Toxic Deluge, Wrath of God, Vanquish the Horde, and importantly Terminus, which we can miracle if we put it back on top of our deck. We also are going to want a number of removal spells, some of which are going to pair very well with Aminatou. So Dress Down, we can potentially blink once, although we're never really going to be in a position to continuously blink it, but we can make it so that we draw 2 cards off of it. We can also redo effects like Loran and Skyclave Apparition to get more value out of these permanent removing creatures. Oath of Liliana and Tithing Blade are both permanents that cause all of our opponents to sack a creature when they enter, so we can repeat that. Reality Acid is an aura that enchants a permanent. It's got Vanishing, and it says when it leaves the battlefield, enchanted permanent's controller sacrifices it. So if we can just keep blinking out Reality Acid, we can keep moving it around and killing different things. And then the biggest one is Gilded Drake. So we can play Gilded Drake, swap it for whatever our opponent's best creature is, then blink Gilded Drake, getting another trigger, swapping it for whatever the next best creature is after that, and do that as many times as we can keep switching Aminatou. Although importantly, it is notable that Gilded Drake is a 3/3 flyer, meaning they will potentially have the option of attacking into Aminatou depending on what we've got going on. So you probably won't be able to keep switching this around for too long. There's also a few more removal spells in here that do not synergize with Aminatou just because we need them, so Swords, Void Rend, and Odawara. We can also run a fairly decent number of stacks cards given that Aminatou is not a creature. So Curse Totem, Dranith, Null Rod, and Stony Silence because Aminatou is only 3 mana, meaning we don't need nearly as much ramp as normal. Also Rest in Peace, Tabernacle, and Torpor Orb. Obviously, if you're on a budget, the first thing you're going to cut is Tabernacle. Our Cantrip Suite, which is something that normally doesn't see too much play. In this case, Brainstorm is going to function as a little bit of an extra sort of Aminatou effect by letting us put stuff back on top of our library. But we also have a bunch of other cantrips that take the form of permanents that we can blink with Aminatou. So Baleful Strix, Wall of Omens, Disinformation Campaign, which also causes our opponents to discard. Similarly, Invasion of Amonkhet is another one that does basically the same thing. Omen of the Seas and Spreading Seas are all cards that we can run with Aminatou. Pretty typical card draw, Citadel, Mystic Remora, Rhystic Study, One Ring, but in particular we've added Predict. Choose a card name, then target player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. If that card is the chosen name, you draw 2, otherwise you draw a card. So you can just put something back on top, then cast Predict, and choose the card name of the card you know is on top, and then this is a 2-mana draw 2. Nothing amazing, but it's good enough for us. Obviously, Console Oracle is in these colors. If you don't like this combo, just go ahead and cut it. The other combo we've got is Altar of the Brood plus Felidar Guardian. So with an Aminatou in play, Felidar Guardian can blink your Aminatou, then Aminatou can blink Felidar Guardian, and they can blink each other back and forth over and over and over. Then all you need is a card that triggers on either creatures or planeswalkers entering or leaving the battlefield, or permanents being exiled. The cheapest one we can get is Altar of the Brood. This also doubles up as able to be searched up via Urza Saga, so that's just another point in its favor. Obviously, a bunch of counter spells. We need to be able to interact. We need to protect Aminatou, so that's what these are good for. Lands are pretty straightforward, nothing really to see here. Ramp, again, pretty straightforward, nothing really much to see here. A much lower count than normal because Aminatou is so cheap, and that enables us to run Null Rod effects. And then finally, our normal old suite of tutors: Demonic, Vamp, Enlightened, Mystical Tutor, etc. And that'll do it. So that is Aminatou the Fateshifter for EDH.